Dave, welcome to the 813 Exchange. Pleasure to have you on the show today. So, tell us a little bit about your story getting started in the development world. And, did you kind of grow up wanting to be a developer, or was this something that kind of morphed in over time? Like, take us from the start.
My existence in the business world never started as being a developer. I mean, being a developer became more of a byproduct of what output came out of my understanding of business in general. I grew up in a family with a single mother and one brother who, took the highest road you could take from an education perspective. I was born and raised and lived in Dunedin my entire life, and my brother graduated from Dunedin and then went on to the University of Florida and then off to college and got his bachelor's degree from the University of Florida and then subsequently got a master's degree and then a second master's degree. And so he took a very corporate route towards building a future. And myself, I didn't take that route. My mother was a tailor and she sewed for a living, and she had a little tailoring shop on 580 in Dunedin. And she did her best to support us, a little woman from South America that immigrated here when she was 18 years old with two of her sisters. And during that time frame that she was supporting us, my brother was off in college, and she was borrowing money from family and friends to send my brother to college. And every day after high school, I would come to see her, and I would before I went home, and after school, and one afternoon when I was excited that I had gotten a great SAT score and I got accepted to go to the University of South Florida, I went to tell her the good news that I was going to stay home and I was going to go to school locally, and she just looked at me and said, "David, I can't afford to send you away to college." And I said, "Well, you're sending my brother. He's been in college for a few years." And she said, "I know, but I've been borrowing money from family and friends." And so I sat down with her, and in 1986, she borrowed $144,000 between the family and friends. And I knew at that point that I could do the math, even as a high school student. My mother, made $25,000 a year. She lived in an $80,000 home, and she owed $144,000. And it wasn't a sustainable way that she was going to be able to live, and not only to support my brother through the rest of his college, but also to support us as a family. So the only thing I knew was that next door to her tailoring shop, there was a Subway store, and it was really busy. Had no idea that about the business. In fact, I've only had two jobs, W-2 jobs in my lifetime prior to owning my own business. And one of them was, bagging groceries at Publix, and the second one was actually working at a pizza shop when I was a young kid. And so I looked at her and I said, "Mom, there's no way you're going to be able to afford to actually physically pay for not only my brother's college, but to support us." And the only thing I knew was that her house was paid for, and the only other thing I knew was that that Subway store was really busy. Like every day I'd come and see it. So I didn't understand business at that point. I just knew that I had a passion to support my family. And at that moment in time, I asked my mother if she would actually provide me an opportunity to build one of those Subway stores. If I was given that opportunity, would she take a mortgage out on her house? And she agreed to do that. So at 17 years of age, my mother went to NCNB Bank, and she borrowed $62,500 at 14.5% interest. I spoke to the two franchisees that owned the location there, and I knew that I couldn't qualify to be a franchisee, and I asked them if they would co-sign on a franchise agreement and allow me to be a franchisee, and they agreed to do that to help my mother out. And so I embarked on building my first store. Subway approved that franchisee to add another location. I just kind of came along for the ride. My mother gave me the $62,500. I never went to college, and I didn't go to my graduation. I focused on building my business. So they mailed me my diploma, and I started building my Subway store shortly after that. And a year later, I opened my store when I was 18 years old. And that's how I started in business. And some people say that pressure, creates an opportunity, that there's nothing like pressure to do that, and I always tell people that you've got an opportunity to either create a diamond or coal at that point. So at that moment, I didn't know that sales tax was due on the 20th. I didn't know that 941 money was due on a quarterly basis. I didn't understand cash flow management. All I knew was that I had, I had an opportunity to save my family. And from that moment in time until I was 27, I lived at home. And every dollar I made, I put back in my business. So I was committed to building, and learning and following a process. And Subway provided me the perfect opportunity to do that, because in a business, there's usually between 8 and 12 pillars of a business that you typically build around. And what franchises do is franchising eliminates a lot of those pillars. So if you're starting any business, an ice cream shop, a hair salon, you're going to get into any type of business in any marketplace, you've got to create a brand, an identity, you've got to create a store design, you've got to create a marketing component to market products and services that you're selling, you've got to create a price structure that's competitive with the marketplace, you've got to manage the supply chain and purchase products in order to provide services. There are all these different elements. You've got accounting and human resources, right? And so you've got these, we call them 10 to 12 pillars of that create a foundation to build a proper business. And Subway eliminates a lot of those. You don't have to worry about creating a marketing component. You don't have to worry about creating a selection of products to sell. You don't have to manage the supply chain. You don't have to create a store design. You didn't have to create a process in order to control your profitability. Subway eliminated those elements within those vertical subsets, and as it forces you to focus on being an operator, and that's what it did. And as an 18-year-old kid starting in a business without any business knowledge or acumen whatsoever, and without a college degree, it provided me the foundation to leverage my sweat equity to its maximum capacity. And the only enemy that I had at that point was myself. The only person left that I had to deal with that would keep me from growing would be my own ability to not allow myself the ability to get captivated by the world around us. And we live in a pretty, we live in a world that doesn't want you to succeed. We live in a world that really wants you to be part of the machine. It wants to captivate you. It wants to provide you with every mechanism to not make the movie of life, to actually watch the movie.
Yeah, and part of that is I think there's also like a lot of societal pressure on people, like especially like people in their 20s, where it's like, okay, this guy has the corporate job, right, and his girlfriend has the corporate job, and now they make enough income where they could afford a nice little home. And it's like, you talk about staying at home until you were 27. A lot of people don't like it, they feel like a pressure, like I don't want to start a business where I have to put money back into it. I'd rather make an income, a fixed salary, and kind of live that comfortable life. And I think that's really like, like even like social media in today's society, like, people see like other people getting married, having kids, like they feel like the pressure to do so, or, they feel other people are going on vacation, they feel the pressure to do so. So they feel like they always have to fit into this certain bucket, like, and they always try to figure out which bucket do I have to fit into. And I think I think social media in our generation has enhanced that in a bad way, of like people feeling exactly how you're explaining.
Absolutely. But part of it is that 36 years later in business, and now reflecting back on it, remember taking that data and turning it into information, and information into knowledge, and then knowledge ultimately into wisdom. When you circle back and look at it, I see some foundational elements that really, if you start with the right foundation, no matter what obstacles you have, no matter what industry you want to get into, no matter where you want to go, there are some fundamentals that you have to look at, and you have to realize that at your core, you have to be in alignment with. And I see some of those elements, and I try to, tell people that I mentor, people that I speak with, that look, you have to be in alignment with a few variables, and if you get into alignment with that, you will be successful in anything that you take on. And one of those variables that you have to get into alignment with is you have to be into alignment and understand that we're born equally. We could come from different backgrounds. You could come from wealth. I could come from poverty. We are all born with the same thing, extreme curiosity. When we're children, we are born in this world with tremendous curiosity, and the world takes a very active role in removing curiosity through every medium possible. in all of us. They want to remove the curiosity from you to experience things because we're going to give it to you in social media. They want to remove the curiosity of traveling or of what it feels like to have an experience because they want to make the experience so abundantly available to you that it just becomes the norm, you know. And when it becomes the norm, you lose that curiosity. The one thing that I can tell you is I'm always exercising my curiosity. I am a curious human being. Like, I am curious to a fault. Like, I enjoy engaging in business activities, learning other people's businesses. That's part of what drove me into development, right? Because I'm curious, I'm involved. I have hundreds of tenants that are in hundreds of business models, and I'm watching them grow and progress and diversify and fall and fail, and I'm watching them go through these cycles. And I'm watching the personalities and the byproducts of all those integrations growing, and it's all part of this curious world that I'm in. And so curiosity is a foundational element that people don't feed. And they typically, you know, they conform to the status quo. They conform to a way of thinking that eliminates their curiosity. Where Sunday is Sunday, and Saturday is the day we go out, and Valentine's Day is the day you tell your girlfriend or your wife you love them, or, you know, every aspect of what you do in life is built around structure and following a process. And then you can see that in the absence of having their own curiosity, a lot of individuals tend to just fall into watching the movie of life instead of making it, because they're not curious anymore. So the second part of it is really truly, when you look at an individual, I've realized over a period of time that if you take any person and you ask them to invest 2 hours a week into anything. If I taught you, hey, listen, come play tennis with me for 2 hours a week, after 52 weeks, you'd do it better than 95% of the people on planet Earth. Whether it's playing the piano, whether it's learning real estate, whether it's understanding anything. So the bar is really not that high. In business in general, if you are willing to invest time into an element for consistently over a period of time, after 1 year, you're going to do it better than 95% of everybody on planet Earth. So in order to elevate yourself above the norm, above the status quo, the bar is not that high. It's just that the barriers that keep you under the bar are super high. Because the real world doesn't want competitive forces. The real world doesn't want to be disrupted. It wants everyone to conform. It wants everybody to get into a pattern, a consistent pattern of just being part of the process.
Yes, no, absolutely. So a key point you brought up there is exactly what you said when you say be part of the process. A lot of people feel like that's where they, like when they go to college, they feel like that's what they were trained to be. Like, I have friends in, you know, the corporate America world that say, like, looking back, I feel like we were just trained to be 9 to 5 structured people.
Well, they're training you to think. I mean, they're training you to follow a risk-reward proposition, right?
Yeah.
You absorb information, we provide you the data, never mind what the data is, you absorb it, you follow the process, you're scored in a KPI, we call it a grade.
Yeah.
Once you get that grade, the process is followed, you're able to move forward and advance. And then all it is that the variables that are part of the process, they shift. They start at variables which may be geometry, biology, calculus, you know, humanities, and then they shift over time. They're not those variables. They're KPIs within JP Morgan, or they're KPIs within Citibank, or they're KPIs within Regions, or within any financial institution or any job. And then they're the KPIs of life. You get married, you have children, you follow the process, and the process is embedded in you, and that's part of structured, organized civilization. And the beautiful thing about capitalism is that it breeds the opportunity to leverage your curiosity, but it also creates a consumeristic methodology, because the same individual that's thinking and expanding and growing is also fighting against the capitalistic output that rewards people with superficial rewards, and people quantifiably measure success the wrong way. They measure success as the output of what it looks like in their eyes. A Ferrari, a business, a successful business. They don't realize that success is mathematics. I can take anybody in this room and teach them how to be successful. I can teach you success, but fulfillment, that's an art.
Yeah.
And I can't teach fulfillment. Fulfillment is the output of not just success. Fulfillment is the output that comes from the art of balancing your life and of not just looking at it one-dimensionally through what it is that you want for you today, but looking at it holistically and saying, okay, what will fulfill me? Where does my why lie? And what is the journey that's going to take me there? Reflecting on the journey is fulfilling. The success that comes out of every event that you do is not the fulfillment. There are tremendous amounts of people that are out there that are successful. And, like, for instance, Anthony Robbins would say, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure in life. A lot of people, they breathe and work on the notion that success is going to create fulfillment, and it isn't. Success is just output. Fulfillment is the art of living through the experience of making the movie of life. And people, when you get in that mind frame where you're actually making the movie of life and you're not focused on the movie of money or the movie of quantifiably measuring a success mechanism based upon how you were taught. I'm taught KPI, meet objective, follow process, rewarded. Meet objective, follow process, rewarded. And the world is beating that into you every day. And it doesn't say be curious, question the status quo, follow a process but question the status quo, pivot. No, it doesn't say any of that. It says follow process, meet KPI, be rewarded. And that creates a success model that doesn't create a fulfillment model.
Yeah, no, definitely. So do you think that curiosity, like, helped you go from Subway to developing other stuff? Because I know you didn't just do one Subway, right?
No, I mean, look, Subway, it was when you're young and you're following the process of becoming entrepreneurial, and you layer curiosity over it, you're going to follow that. I'm in a peer group, right, with other franchisees. I'm building a store. I'm understanding how finance structure works at a rudimentary level. I'm going through that process. I mean, I built my first store, and then Subway, if you wanted to build a store, Subway had an equipment leasing program where you could go and lease the wallpaper, the computers, the tile. You could literally buy all the FF&E, the furniture, fixture, and equipment, and Subway knew that you were in Subway, you're a franchisee in your name individually. You cannot hold a franchise agreement in a corporation name. So you're personally liable for everything to the company. So they had your personal guarantee from the first franchise you sold. So when I went to build my second one, they're like, look, we have an equipment leasing program for the rock bottom price of 29.95% interest. We will allow you to finance another store, and we will cross-collateralize it. So if you default on paying your payment on this second location, you'll lose your first location. So it was a golden handcuff, and so I built my second store, had a landlord that threw in some tenant improvement money, and I started leveraging up, right? Building a second store, and then I was managing 2, and then I built a third store, and then I was managing 3, and I'm 4 years into it with 3 stores, and I get a call from the IRS. And they're like, hey, you haven't filed a tax return. And I'm like, oh, I'm 21 years old. I mean, I haven't made a lot of money yet. And they're like, oh, that's not really that funny. And so I get audited, and we go through the process, and I realize that I owe them $135,000, and okay, with the penalty. And next thing you know, guess what? I'm selling a Subway store and learning a lesson in order to take care of them. And then I wash, rinse, repeat, regroup, build some more stores. And with Subway, because I was new to the team, I was always getting the worst stores. I wasn't getting the best stores. I had these stores that weren't that great, that weren't very profitable. And by the time I was 23, I had 4 stores. And at that point, it was getting very difficult to navigate and manage my stores. I couldn't be everywhere at once. And people were starting to steal from me, and it was getting harder. And we had these little cash registers that you could buy at Sam's Club, and they weren't the best in the world, obviously, and we couldn't control the environment. And there was a deficiency in Subway's model as it related to a lack of IT support. And at that time, there were no POS systems. There wasn't Aloha, PosiTouch, Squirrel, Toast. None of these products existed, but there was a need that was there. And I realized that, and my curiosity for that said, hey, listen, I need to fix this problem. So I built an Excel spreadsheet in Windows, And I created all these macros to kind of manage Subway's paperwork system. And one of my friends from high school came in town and saw the spreadsheet that I built, and he said, "That's amazing." He's like, "But I'm a double E graduate from Georgia Tech, and I'm a co-op student at Northern Telecom, and I'm interning over there." He's like, "Why don't you write a relational database?" And I'm like, "I don't even know what that is." And he's like, "Well, if you can teach me Subway, I can write the software program." And at the time, Subway didn't have any type of software, didn't have a relational database, there was nothing in the marketplace. McDonald's was still on cash registers. And so we said, okay, I said, I'll do it. So I invested 25 grand. We bought some hardware and software. We built a software platform. And at the time, Windows was on Windows 3.1. Okay, so it was DOS laid over with, Windows. It wasn't a secure operating system. So we actually built it on a Mac platform. And Macs were like taboo at that point. They weren't business computers. They didn't belong they were in schools at that moment in time, And so we built a software platform, and a year later we showed it to the founder of Subway, and he loved it, but he just felt like, look, the average franchisee turns the key in the morning, and every day he goes home, the next day he comes in and turns the key. He doesn't need all this technology. But in Subway collects royalties on a weekly basis. So really? Subway's week ends on a Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, you have to call in your numbers by 3 o'clock. And you had to call in all your sales numbers and then key variables. There were 27 key component variables that you called into your coordinator, we called them. And that coordinator, they got the daily sales. Okay, Wednesday sales was 524.68. And we call in each day's sales. Then the total is this number. They verify it in their database. Okay, and then how many footlong sales did you have? We had 187 footlongs. How many 6-inch sales? How many soda sales? And we give them all the key variables. We call it in, hang up the phone, and the reason why they took that data was to then hit the ACH debit button on how much royalties they were deducting by Friday. Now, we would fill out 4 hours of paperwork, mail it in, and then when they got that paperwork on Friday, they'd spend the rest of their weekend, like Friday, Monday, and Tuesday, and part of Wednesday before we called in again, verifying that what you actually filled out matched what you called in. And these people were called coordinators, and he had floors of them because they had about 4,000 stores at that point.
Yeah.
And so we showed him that on our database system, we could just do a dial-up connection, and we could transmit electronically all that data to his Oracle database. And when we did that, and we created an API interface with his Oracle database, and we omitted the coordinator, he realized that he could eliminate 2 floors of human beings if these people actually bought our POS system, and all that data that got all of his revenue tracked would automatically get put into his system, and it would electronically transfer. And so he said, hey, if you guys can sell a system, give it a shot. So we sold our first system here at East Bay in 19. There was a Subway store, and Ibrahim Kadir owned the store, and so we put a system in there, and next month we sold 10, and then 18 months later we sold $24 million worth of product. And here I am at 24 years old, going all over the United States, and for 11 years that's what I did. I traveled to 64 countries, all 50 states, and we rolled our system out globally. We were the only POS provider for Subway globally. So I took a need that was in a business model. I sprinkled my level of curiosity in the fact that I wasn't going to follow the status quo and focus just on building stores, but I would question every single part of the business process. Even though it was a structured franchise organization, I found the holes that existed, realized that there was a big enough hole that something needed to be done, didn't wait for the company to fix the problem. Instead, not knowing anything about supply chain management, the POS industry, technology, not ever writing a day's worth of code in my life, I started trying to fix with my ability, the ability to, better control my environment. Then I aligned myself with resources in order to create a product to do what? To create conversion. And the conversion isn't just to tell a story, but to actually create a going concern business. And carved a niche out within that industry. And after that, it continued to grow. Because when I did that, I became exposed to the franchise at a completely different level. Now, I was exposed to franchisees in 64 countries. everybody rowing in the same direction, running a business. And over those 11 years, I realized very quickly that every one of these businessmen that were in this business traded time for experiences. And time is the only commodity in life that we can't buy. Yeah. And as a 24-year-old, going around realizing that this person had more years with Subway than I had been alive, and he had 15 or 20 or 30 stores, so I would fly to Atlanta and I would meet, the development agent in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And then I would leave there and go to Vancouver and meet Jerry Lev, or Joe Hart in Atlanta, or Wayne Levin in Miami, Florida. Or I would meet, Pete Slomiani in North Carolina, or Hamid Al-Nakib, who controls the United Kingdom subway distribution, and he's the master franchisor and the development agent for London and the United Kingdom. Or, all of these different, there were 174 development agents in the United States and over 176 of them in the rest of the world. And they all controlled, and they were all rowing in the same direction. And there were hundreds and hundreds of franchisees. Whether I met a small franchisee or a medium-sized one, Peter DePasqua, who I eventually owned shopping centers with in Orlando, that his father was the hairdresser for the founder of Subway, and he became a development agent for Subway, to, master franchisees like Dennis and Don Rottinghouse, who owned over 400 stores in the Midwest. All of these franchisees, they all traded time for experiences. Yes. And I broke that into 4 boxes.
So then how did you eventually get started with your first development that wasn't a Subway?
Well, what had happened is that when you're in business, there are different levels, right? You start as an employee, and you become a W-2 employee, and then you understand the process of doing that. And then you can scale and become a manager of employees. And you realize what that leverage point looks like, that pathway to leveraging time of staff in order to create an outcome that you benefit from in a more leveraged perspective. And then you have a choice to make, an entrepreneurial choice or a corporate choice. On my side, the entrepreneurial choice was made before I even touched management on the other side. So I started basically as a child in the business of being an entrepreneur. I was coddled in a franchise model. And then it grew, right, into a model where I was a franchisee, I became a multi-unit owner, then I built a derivative product. I actually became a dual citizen, so to speak, right? Yeah. I was a citizen of being entrepreneurial, but then I was also a citizen of being in a structured employee-based environment that considered you an entrepreneur, like a working partner, like a Chick-fil-A franchisee or a Subway franchisee. Yeah. And getting involved as an entrepreneur, I was still following that structure, so it was kind of the best of both worlds. I was in a control group, just dealing with Subway franchisees, but I was also running a business, building a business, managing a business that had scaling capacity, that had the opportunity to get outside of Subway's model. So we could build products for other companies like CC's Pizza, like Schwann's, that had derivative companies. We ended up building products for other people. Yeah. During that process, getting into real estate was a byproduct of gathering data, turning that data into information, turning that information into knowledge, right? Yeah. I was able to do that at an accelerated pace because I had all of these multi-unit owners and franchisees and development agents in the Subway model that had invested tremendous amounts of time, and they had a report card and they would spit it out. So I would, as a 26-year-old or 27 or 28 or 30-year-old, I would get on a plane and I'd fly to Atlanta and I'd meet Joe Hart. I'd get greeted at the airport by his staff. They'd take me to do a training seminar on our software program. That evening, Joe would take me to his house. He'd introduce me to his wife. He would show me everything that he's done over the last 25 years to be a part of the Subway team. Yeah. He would show me all the stores he built. He would show me his derivative businesses if he was involved in real estate. And then he would show me, how his family ran. He would tell me about all these different components. Then I'd get off that, get on a plane, I'd fly to Denver, Colorado and see Steve Lauer. He was a multi-unit owner. He had 40 stores in that market. And he'd tell me what his 27 years of Subway experience had done. He'd introduce me to his wife, right? Or his girlfriend if he wasn't married yet. He'd show me what other derivative businesses he was involved in. And then what he would do is he would give me his report card for all those years he had expended. And then it became a game because I would do it over and over again. It was like, literally, I'd pack my bags up. It became addictive. I spent an average of 250 days a year on the road just absorbing everybody's experiences because they were investing time and giving me the output of what it looked like. And then I broke it into 4 boxes, right? What did they do financially? You know, did they start with Subway? Because I was in a control group. They all had to play the Subway game. It's like being there, getting these, you know, seeing more than your competitor can see. It's like watching Wheel of Fortune. They turn over the vowels and consonants, and then somebody gives you like 3 extra vowels and consonant, and nobody else has them, but you do. Yeah. And you can see more, right? So in this control group, because I didn't have different types of businessmen, they were all forced to follow the Subway model.
Yeah.
I could say, okay, now you're forced to follow the Subway model. You got into Qdoba, you got into Little Caesars, you got into Beverly Hills medical spas. What did that look like after you spent 15 years doing it? Were you able to create a monetized return? What mistakes did you make that you had to give up time and go backwards on? Oh, so I broke it into a financial box. Then I broke it into an emotional box. I would go and meet a multi-unit owner and he would introduce me to his wife. Some would introduce me to their wives during the evening and their girlfriends during the day. Some would have been divorced once or twice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So everybody traded time for experiences, and their emotional state of whether their family cared for them, didn't, their children hated them, were involved in the business, not involved, all of those elements, they traded time for those experiences. They did it financially, they did it physically, they did it emotionally, and they did it spiritually. And really, I broke it into 4 boxes. And I spent 11 years filling these boxes full of experiences, just full of them. So if I take an experience that you've had in your lifetime, and I say, you know, how does it feel? For instance, if you say, David, you're in a group and we're talking, and you know, I say, where have you been that's been absolutely amazing? And you're like, I've been to London. I'm like, great. And you tell me about it, and we're in a group, and somebody chimes in and says, yes, I saw Buckingham Palace on YouTube yesterday and it was absolutely amazing. It's like, no, you don't know the smell of the air. You don't know what it feels like, right?
Yeah.
Well, in my world, going through the process of boxing all these experiences, something dynamic happened in me. Those experiences actually became part of mine. It bridged synapse fluid in my body to connect my experience to their experiences. So after 11 years of doing this, I had a choice to make. Yeah. When I divested my interest from the software company and decided that I was done being a part of that journey, I unboxed the boxes and said, okay, what do I want my life to look like financially, emotionally, spiritually, and physically? Yeah. And then I started blocking and tackling and setting goals. And when I looked at the business of being in Subway, and then I looked at all the derivatives that came out of all of those experiences from all of those operators over 11 years. And I looked at what it looked like in order to be in that model and where I wanted to create wealth. I realized that I wanted to do it in real estate. Mm-hmm. So it was simple. I broke it down. I knew my pathway was going to be that I wanted a going concern business to create cash flow. Mm-hmm. That was my side hustle, as new millennials call it. Yeah. And then I knew that I wanted my real estate to be my wealth building mechanism. Yeah. So I made some commitments to how I was going to structure it. First, what am I going to do? Follow the same process. Gather data, turn it into information, create knowledge, and over time it becomes wisdom. So now I know I want to be in real estate. Now I got to gather data, right? Yep. Turn it into information. So I went to my 4 landlords that I had as a Subway franchisee, and I met with them. And I wanted them to do the same. I wanted to apply the same methodology that I learned from all these other people into interviewing and spending time with my landlords. And I did, and I grew very closely to one of my landlords. His name's Gregory Politis. Nice guy, lives here. We ended up building a shopping center together. I'm the only partner that he has in real estate outside of his family. Mm-hmm. And today he's a very prominent individual in Tampa Bay. He's one of the founders of HCI Insurance Company, which trades on the New York Stock Exchange. He is one of the largest government developers in the state of Florida for the U.S. government, and he's a local guy. Very, very, great partner, great individual. And he taught me the real estate business. And so I went through and mentored with each one of my landlords because I had that opportunity. I buckled onto one of them, and he taught me the real estate business. And I went through the process of understanding the entire vertical side of the real estate business. So I got my brokerage license. I got my construction license. I wanted to be a great broker, a great contractor. I wanted to start by sweeping the floors. So that's the part of the business that I got into. And when I did, I got my brokerage license, I got my construction license. Subway has a local development agent here. At the time, his name was Michael Asala, and he had a position that became available to be a leasing agent, to handle Subway's leases for their 300 leases in this market. Because there are 8 counties on the west coast of Florida that he controlled, and he wanted an employee to do that. The job paid $1,000 a week. Now, at that moment in time, I was a millionaire. I had already made millions of dollars. I applied for the position. And he said, David, why do you want this position? You're a franchisee, you're a multi-unit owner. Why do you want to be a leasing agent? I said, because I know Subway, I know the leases, I want to be involved in the real estate side of the equation. He's like, look, it only pays $1,000 a week. I said, I'll take the position. So I was able to work, and for 7 years, I managed the leasing process for Subway. And I got in front of every developer in town. I call it playing the pass line. If you know anything about craps, there are different ways that you can play craps. You can play against the house, you can play with the house, and real estate is multidimensional. You're not always buying, building, stabilizing, and selling, because sometimes the market doesn't allow you to do that. You know, so I realized that there was the buy, build, stabilize, and then finance and sell. You know, that there was a way to do that, and then there's a value add way, and then there's a way when the market's crashing to buy non-performing assets, and it's a different type of structure. But during my initial stages, I was at a rudimentary level. That's what I did. And Gregory Politis gave me that opportunity. He said, I've got a line of credit. I will make you my partner in a deal. I'll show you how to structure deals. The more constant you can make variables, the more effective you can be in real estate. So I knew that if I could understand the income side of the real estate, what the market would support in rents, and I could generate that, and I made that more constant, it would make the project more stable, right? You know how much money you're going to generate. Then I knew if I could make the construction side more constant and understand my cost in today's value of what it costs, I could then stabilize that, turn that variable into a constant. And so each element that I was clarifying and becoming more and more constant gave me better clarity on developing projects. But remember, that's all built around the foundation that your mind is in the right place, that your discipline is in the right place, that you're actually doing this. And I'm doing this as I'm, you know, living at home with my mother. And my friends are putting pressure on me. Why don't you have your apartment? Why aren't you, you know, in your terms? Why wouldn't you be a channel side? Why don't you? Why, you know, all of those elements. You know what I mean? But remember, I was installed when I was young with this premise that, you know, I didn't want to fail. I didn't have, you know, a second chance. I didn't have a degree. I didn't have parents that could take me and prop me up. I didn't have a membership. You know, I didn't have, you know, friends that I knew from college. I didn't have a network. And we didn't have tools like we do now, where you can get on Zillow, or not Zillow, but you can get on, you know, Indeed, and you can go out there and market yourself. You know, this is old school, you know, back in the day. You know, so with that being said, I was able to really start building my knowledge within the construct of the vertical called the real estate business. But I did it separate and apart from managing my income. So I went from 44 stores to 42 Subway stores. I understood how to leverage and build stores. I understood how to manage capital requirements. I understood how to manage people. I understood how to do that. And during that process, I was able to manage wearing the right size shoe to start building this real estate side. So I started in 1999, you know, with, you know, a $3 million net worth. And, you know, I started working with a partner on building real estate and building Subway stores, and over, you know, 25 years, you know, took that to $185 million. You know, and just kept adding and adding and adding and adding and building and adding and building. And it's amazing what happens if you do something consistently over and over and over again.
I'm just watching TV, hanging out.
I mean, look.
Like, what else do people do?
We're all working on old architecture. Right? I mean, if I literally, the significance of you talked a little bit earlier about your iPhone 16. I mean, the significance of an iPhone 16 is it's 16 years old. I mean, that's the significance of it, right? I mean, that's the 16 means that it was, the birth of the iPhone is only 16 years old. If I hand you an iPhone 1 today and you had to use it, by the end of the day, you throw it at me. You'd be like, David, it doesn't have Bluetooth, it doesn't have Wi-Fi, none of my apps work on this thing. All I can do is dial a number, and I don't even remember a number. Like, I don't remember my mom's number. I don't remember anybody's number. So I can only dial like 3 or 4 people that I even remember their phone number because nothing else works on it. And that's only a 16-year-old device. I mean, you're running your whole life, you're living your whole life with a multi-million-year device in between your shoulders. And it's not trained to thrive. That device in between your shoulders is trained to survive. And so I spend an enormous amount of my time deprogramming myself in order to reprogram myself to do it a little bit better today than I did yesterday. And you cannot just write old source code or new source code over old source code. You actually have to deprogram yourself. You have to take a minute to understand that it's not just about your objective to learn something about what is going to get you somewhere. It's about being objective and opening your mind up to think differently, to view the world through a different lens, to view problem solving through a different lens. If you don't do that, the world wins, because the world will teach you how to think. And it will teach you how to problem solve in a way that meets the world's objectives and makes you think that you're doing it in a way that makes sense, but in reality, you're missing the obvious. And that's the thing. I spend my time that I spend 15 minutes a day learning about something that has nothing to do with what I want to do to make money or to create wealth or to become successful. I spend time just filling my mind with things that normal people spend, filling their mind with experiences. Like, they'll sit there, I'll be on a flight and I'll see somebody on TikTok or on Instagram, and they're flipping and flipping and flipping and flipping, and they see an experience, they'll stop, they'll flip back, they'll flip forward so they can see it again, just to gather. They're filling their minds and they're filling their beings up with experiences instead of using their curiosity to grow. And garbage in is garbage out at that point. And then as you see it through that lens, you'll see that no matter what it is, no matter what vertical, what business, any person that's on your podcast, that any person that's in the business world looks at, once you build the right foundation, you'll find your passion. And I can't teach 3 things. I tell people all the time, I can't teach passion, I can't teach discipline, and I can't teach honesty. But if you apply passion, discipline, and honesty to anything, I usher a church, my Catholic church. I go there, I don't get paid for it, but I apply passion. I'm disciplined, I go every week that I'm in town. And I'm honest with myself, right? I love doing it. People feel it. And you know what they want to do? They want to be a part of me. The little old ladies come and grab my hand at the end of church, and they're like, thank you for coming. I mean, I make a difference. But if you get your fundamentals right, and you're building on a solid ground, and you look at your level of curiosity, really look at it. I tell people, buy yourself a set of, people ask me how I think the way I think, and I'll close and kind of tell you this, but I tell people, when you're young and you're driving around for 5 hours from Des Moines, Iowa to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, there's not a lot to do. You're reflecting, you're doing a lot of self-reflection, what I mean? And so, people always ask me when I was young, how do you think the way you think? How do you think the way you think? And I tell them there's 2 things. There's one thing that I can reflect on after all these years that make me think the way I think. When I was a child, my father gave me a board. It was a checkerboard. And I was 5, and he said, David, I'm going to teach you a game. And I'm like, oh, Dad, don't worry about it, man. This is checkers. I love this game. And he's like, no. He's like, here's the pieces. And I'm like, I open it up. I'm like, what are these? And he's like, these are chess pieces. And I'm like, I don't understand. I'm like, this is a checkerboard. He goes, no, it's the same board. It's a different game. And I'm like, what are you, okay. So he's like, okay, there's 16 pieces. Let me show you how these work on each side. And so we go through, and he starts showing me the game. And He said, look, the name of the game is not to take every piece. The name of the game is that you're going to lose pieces. The name of the game is ultimately to capture the king on the other side of the equation.
Yeah.
Now, you may come out, every action is going to create a reaction. The deeper that you can think will give you better perspective so that you can solve the problem. And so I said, okay, so we played the game. He killed me, right? First or second. And then I started learning the pieces, and then I started playing the game, and every single time I played my father, he would beat me. I would learn how to think 3 moves ahead, and he would always be 1 step ahead of me. And I just kept trying and trying. And then one afternoon, my friends came over, and they wanted to play games, and I'm like, hey, I got this game. And I put this game in front of them, and they didn't know what the pieces were, and I showed them, and then I could think 2 moves or 3 moves ahead of them, and I would always beat them.
Yeah.
And so that game taught me perspective. It taught me depth. It taught me how to view life through a different lens.
Yeah.
And so, instinctively, it got ingrained in me. I'm here because I had a father who beat me. Because I had a father who beat my mother. Because I had a father who was never there for me or my mother. Because I had a father who embarrassed me in front of my friends, my family, and in front of the community. But rather than tell you how I got here, go down 87 stories, take the ferry over to Rutgers Island, and then sell E7, you'll see exactly how I got here. So life is really never about where you've come from. It's never about the experiences that you've had. It's never about the good or the bad that has entered into your being, that has forced you to become the person that you are. It's just about how you want to view them. So I tell people, I have 4 boxes for you. I have 2 tools and 1 story. So I give them my story. I tell them my theory on my 4 boxes. I tell them to buy 2 tools. One of them is a mirror, and the other one is a set of crutches.
Yeah.
And the first thing you do is you put the mirror on the wall and you set goals. And every day you look at them and you apply honesty, passion, and discipline. You set goals, short and long term. And if you can lie to yourself, then we're done having a conversation, because there's nothing I can do to help you. But once you start setting goals and you apply honesty, passion, and discipline, you start accomplishing and building security blankets.
Yeah.
Right? And you're able to grow. And every day, for the first 10 years of my life that I did this, I put 2 crutches in the corner of my room. They were $39. I bought them at CVS.
Yeah.
And every day, I looked at them, and I had a choice to make, whether the experiences from today I was going to use as a crutch to say this is who I am, or whether I was going to say, no, this is why I am who I am. And I chose not to use my experiences, good or bad, as a crutch to say this is why I am who I am. And 10 years later, I took them out of my house, and today, I live in a 31,000 square foot house. I walk in the door, and I see those crutches every day.
Every day. That's an interesting way. That's
they're not there,
story,
but they're there.
Yeah, and I like your clothes. The Rutgers Island one.
Yeah,
that was a good clothes.
And so, that's the reality.
Yeah, no, it is the reality. It's definitely the reality.
So, no matter what business you interview, no matter who you touch, you have to look at the fundamentals of what they're doing and where does their why sit. And if their foundation's right and they apply honesty, passion, and discipline, they're going to be tremendously successful, because they're going to uncover the mediocrity that exists everywhere. You see it with Doge and Elon Musk. You see it in government. You see it in businesses. From the outside, it's easy to look in and see it.
Yeah.
Until it's you.
Yeah.
And it's your world.
Yeah.
Right? And you're sitting in the vortex, swirling around, and the world's got you. And how does it have you? Maybe it's got you in a relationship you don't want to be out of. Maybe it's got you in a financial position you don't want to be out of. Maybe it's got you in an emotional position, in a physical position. But the world captivates as many people as possible, and it forces them to get in line. And it's up to every single individual to realize that and to stop drinking the Kool-Aid.
Gotcha. Well, David, pleasure to have you on the show. Where can people find you if they wanted to get in contact with you?
I'm available. My name's on about 80 signs. You leave this building and there's a phone number up there that says for lease, and it's got my cell phone number. Really not difficult to find me, and that's the interesting thing. I've done some seminars for when I spoke at Subway events.
Yeah.
I would talk to 1,000 people and give them exactly the same, breakdown that I just gave you. And I would get 10 people that would come up to me, and they would want my number. And after a month, I'd have 2 people call me. And after a year, I'd have maybe 1 person.
Absolutely.
So, but I'm available. You know, you can get my details on our website at EuropeanEquities.com.
EuropeanEquities.com.
Yeah, or you can actually pick up on one of the signs, or we'll provide you with our details. You know, my contact details. But I'm very available.
All right. Well,
All right,
Dave,
I'm on
pleasure
LinkedIn.
to have you on the
guys.
show.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate it.
No problem.